Hey, what's up, people? 3DO Teardown? 3DO Teardown. Now, I wanted one of these things so bad when I was a kid, but they were super expensive, and my parents would never have bought me one anyways. So I actually didn't end up getting one until a few years ago when, actually, it's been more than a few years ago now, but my wife bought me one for my birthday one year, and that's this unit. And it's in very good condition. So I guess whoever originally owned this one kept it in pretty good shape. I've never looked inside of it, and that's why we're here now. Obviously, I've been kind of curious just to see what's inside, and I know I can go online and look up pictures of this sort of thing and see what's in it and stuff. But I like to experience it for myself. And I mean, I know through video it's not going to be quite the same thing. But I'm going to try to get in there and use the microscope if it's of any benefit. We'll get up close to the components and see what's all inside. So without further ado, let's get started. I got to go find myself a screwdriver. And I kind of wish that the cord was removable, that it had some sort of plug that, could be pulled out. Unfortunately, it's a permanently wired plug. So that's going to be kind of annoying, but hopefully we can disconnect it from inside once the unit is open, and then that way I can set it aside and I just don't have it flapping around in the breeze going out. So yeah, let me go get a screwdriver real quick. All right, screwdriver in hand. Let's go aerial. And there we go. We got a view up from the top side, and I'm going to set something down so I don't scratch the crap out of the finish, even though I kind of cleaned off the bench a little bit. Wiped it off, but I don't want there to be little pieces of debris that's going to scratch it all up if it's going to be sliding around. So on the bottom, we've got 4 screw holes, and as far as I'm aware, those are probably the only 4 that need to be removed. There was a couple of rubber feet on the 2 front ends of the console, and those had gotten super sticky and gooey that I removed those, and so there's nothing there now, but those would have been there. They were leaving stuff all over the place, and so they had to go. So let's take the 4 of these out, and there we go. That is the last one. Okay, so I think everything comes out from that the top side is the one that has to be removed. So let's see if that's the case. The case of the case, and it's not budging. Okay, I think I can see what look like maybe some clips around the perimeter. Okay, I'm going to see if I can spudge it open with a toy blade or a plastic blade. That seems to want to separate. I want to use metal. I want to mess it up. It seems to be going. Kind of working my way around the outsides. There it goes. Got part of it out. It's going little by little. There it goes. So I got most... this popped back in. This corner's being stubborn. But as you can see, it's popping apart. Uh-oh. Lost the power button in there. Let's get that out. This not the reset, but the open and close button also wants to fall inside. There it goes. All right, so there's the cover. Not a whole lot to see there, but it turns out that the top of the unit is actually 2 separate pieces. So it's this sort of outer part of the case. And then the middle part where the Panasonic logo is, that's an entirely separate piece that's clipped onto the outer piece. As you can see, it's got several clips around it. So that's interesting. I thought it was one whole piece, but it's not. But yeah, nothing else to look at on there. And there's a top view of the unit. So we got a transformer. So the wire or the cable coming in goes directly into that transformer. We've got 1 connector plugged into the board. That's this red one. And that No clue what that is. Maybe that's a ground, because the only other connector going to the transformer is this 2-pin connector, and that's going to be the low voltage side. Yeah, that's kind of interesting. Well, if I remove those 2 screws, this will allow me to remove the transformer along with the power cable, and then that's no longer going to be an issue. So just those 2 screws, and the transformer can come right out. No other identification on the transformer, so I don't know what voltage it's putting out. Oh, wait, there's something there. Nah, that's just going to be like a part number, but good luck trying to find any information on that. So, yeah, there we go. So it's a single winding for the output, unless this is like a center tapped winding, but it would be really weird have it going into the main side. So, yeah, I have a feeling that's probably just a ground. But then that doesn't make sense. I just thought about it. There is no ground on the plug. So, I don't know. I guess we'll see what it's wired to on the board. So, there's the input. We can see we've got a fuse. There is a connector going to, this is probably going to be the, oh, that's the fan. So this is the little fan on the side. It's hard to see there, but it says 9 volt. Yeah, so it's a little 9 volt fan, 120 milliamp. So that can be unplugged. There we go. It's a little dusty. Maybe I'll dust it off while I'm inside. There's the power switch. So that's probably just cutting off the, if not the transformer, probably wherever it gets rectified, it might be cutting it off at that point. Not entirely sure. I don't know that this thing would have any sort of standby voltage. Looks like the disk drive is one of the first things we're going to have to remove, but there's some ribbon cables in the backside. So in order to disconnect those to be able to pull the disk drive out, looks like I gotta remove a few screws, or 2 screws. Looks like this shielding will come up, and then on the side it just has a few tabs that just sort of hold it onto the case of the CD unit. I do need a smaller screwdriver for that, though. Okay, that's those 2 small screws out. So now I believe this should just pop up. And yep, no issues. There we go. So that's just shielding for the CD unit. And there's the CD drive. It's a little dusty in there. I don't know if we have any dust on that laser, the lens. But now we can unplug these 2 ribbons, and then looks like we just have 4 screws on the corners that are holding the disk drive in place. So that should allow the entire disk drive to come out. Surprisingly, these screws are not very tight on their little mounting posts. Disconnect these ribbons. Okay, that wide one was a little more difficult. Okay, there we go. Looks like this should come up. Yeah, so pretty modular so far. Pretty easy to take stuff apart. It's like CD has a ROM built in. We'll take this board off and look on the underside of it. I'm not going to take this stuff apart destructively, because I don't want to damage it. I just kind of want to see what's inside. And as we can see right there, it was manufactured in May of 1994. A lot of stuff we got on the side. And there we go. There's the specs for this drive. Apparently it's model CR-560B. It uses 5 volts at 800 milliamps and then 9 volts at 1.5 amps. I'm going to assume that the 9 volt is probably what's used for driving the motors, and the 5 volts is going to be for like the logic stuff, obviously. So that makes sense. It almost looks like it would be a parallel, like an IDE type of drive. I don't know what all the pinout for this is going to be. It looks like this bottom one might be for power. We can see we've got quite a few that are all connected together. So that kind of makes sense. Looks like we've got some other smaller one there for who knows what. But yeah, just got a few other ICs along or around the bottom. We got some 7400 series logic. It looks like it's a 74HC 74. That one's got too much conformal coating on it. I can't tell what it is. And then some other stuff, probably some like linear amplifiers or something. That's the motor for the door. So that's the one that's going to pop the, or not the door, the tray. So that's going to like allow the tray to pop out, pop it back in. That's the motor for the spindle. That looks like it's going to be a brushless motor because it's got quite a few traces coming out of that motor. Okay, so I thought that I was just going to be able to remove these 4 screws off this bottom board and then be able to pull it out. But there's 2 other screws that we can see that are coming from the opposite side and up here as well. So I think what I'm going to have to do is, first of all, remove those 2 and those 2, and then I can remove those 4 that we saw. And that will, looks like we got some on the bottom or the back corner. Yeah, just on the back corner. We got one as well. So there's going to be 2 other screws down below underneath this plate. So yeah, until I remove those, I can't really pull the rest of the tray out. So let's take these off. Okay, so that's all 4 of those. I'll just move these off to the side. Okay, so that's the last screw removed from the front end of the unit. And now this can come off, and it's starting to feel like it's losing some of its rigidity. That looks like it's using all parts of this to have some like structural like strength. So this is the casing that goes all around the CD-ROM drive. So not a whole lot else going on there. And now I have access to remove these 4 screws, and then now I can pull the board out. I'm also going to have to disconnect some of these connectors in the front. This one, so I guess you just pop forward that, and then I can pop that out. Yeah, and then these just come out. Yeah, there we go. Okay, with all 4 screws out, I can, there's some, man, there's some really thin ribbon cables on the opposite side. I didn't see. Yeah, there we go. Let's not tear those. So I'm going to try to be careful. It looks like there's another connector in the back. This is probably going to be for the that's not the oh, it is a motor. Yeah, that's another motor. So that's going to be probably for the sled motor for the lens. And I cannot get this one to come out. Ah, there we go. Okay, and that's the laser. I'm going to be really careful not to touch that very much. There we go. And just pop this out. There we go. So this one is, I cannot tell. Might be part of the pickup assembly. Not sure. But there we go. That's the opposite side of the board. Let's take a look at that real quick. So we've got our power input. We see we've got some capacitors. That there's going to be one of the motor drivers. And judging by its location, looks like it's possibly driving the tray motor. And this motor in the back, I thought it was going to be like a stepper when I saw that's sort of the worm drive, but it's geared on the end there. So it does have a worm drive itself. So that's how it moves the sled back and forth. Not much of a point in taking that apart. So I'm just going to leave all this stuff intact pretty much. I do not want to mess up this laser assembly. And we see we got our home switch that's connected to that connector. Oh, and that we can see down there, that's going to be the limit switch for the tray so that it knows when it's like fully opened and closed. So that's pretty much all there is to see. Oh, actually, I just noticed this. The tray itself has some brushes. So when the tray opens, it brushes the lens on the pickup assembly. So we can see that in action. Let's see if I activate this. I'm just going to, there we go. So the the pickup assembly is dropping, and now it's released the tray. So I can pull this out. Got just a little bit closer there. You can see that those brushes just ever so gently brush up against where the lens assembly is, but it doesn't even touch. I thought it was going to touch it, but it does not touch it. So I wonder what they have that for then. I mean, it'll go over the spindle. You can see there it runs over the spindle. I don't get what the point of that is. It makes more sense to me if it would have been brushing off the laser lens, but with some better light on that, yeah, you can see that it does not rub up against the lens like at all. It still has a gap, unless when you eject this thing and it's powered, maybe it has the pickup more like towards the end, and that would make sense, because then it could for sure rub up against the lens on the back end. But where it sits now, it doesn't make sense, so I'm not entirely sure. Maybe when I put this back together, we'll test it out and see if that's the case. And there's an extreme close-up of the lens assembly itself. As we can see, we've got a little bit of dust like around it. The lens itself looks pretty okay. You can see that the entire lens assembly is suspended by these very, very thin wires. I'm not going to touch them because I don't want to accidentally bend them. So these coils are the voice coils that would move this unit in like this up and down direction. And then it would have a few other coils that would move it in the like the left and right direction. I cannot see those. So, and then there would also be up and down, I believe. I don't remember if they only have 2 sets of coils or 3, but we can see that there's at least 2 right there. So, yeah, that's about as far as we're going to go for this part. I do not want to mess it up at all, like I said. So, yeah, there we go. And I kind of got distracted from this board. So, the rest of the stuff that we got a couple of Matsushita branded ICs. Those are probably going to be, obviously, a CD-ROM type stuff. There's the ROM for the unit itself, and it's actually in a socket, or it's socketed. The pins themselves, the socket pins, are soldered directly to the board. So this could be, like removed and reinserted if needed for whatever reason. Maybe they build everything and they put the ROM on afterwards. And so Sanyo numbered part that looks like it's going to be RAM. And then we got another Matsushita branded part. That's going to be for the laser pickup, most likely, since it's connected to the connector that went to the laser assembly. So, yeah, not a whole much else. We got a switch there. We got a diode sort of by its lonesome up in the front. That looks like it's got something to do with this connector going to the motor. Looks like we got one of the pins going there. Looks like it goes to one of those vias. So let's see. Where does this go? Okay, so maybe that's the driver for the motor. Yeah, not entirely sure. It looks like that might be the driver for the motor up in the front. So maybe it's not a brushless motor, because that looks a little too anemic to be a brushless driver. So, yeah, not entirely sure. It's all encased in metal, so it's kind of hard to tell what it is. And, yeah, there's a crystal. Best as I can tell, that's a 33.86 megahertz crystal. And that's about it. So a lot of other passive little components, capacitors, surface mount resistors. Got one little transistor all by its lonesome. Right there it says I and O, so I'm going to guess that that's a small linear regulator. And then we got a couple of coils or inductors. So, yep, that's about it. And on the rest of the main unit, we've got a few screws that are holding this cover in place, and looks like those would probably need to come off before I remove the rest of the shielding. They got a couple tabs right there that are holding that down. So let's go ahead and remove those. I'm also going to put a few of these screws back to their locations just to make it easier to remember where stuff goes. They're not all the same. They're slightly different, so just going to be careful with that. And let's see. Does this come off? Oh, that's slotted onto the rest of the... Okay, I think I'm just going to have to remove the rest of the screws from the shielding. Oh, while I'm in here, I'm going to take this out. This is the light pipe for the two indicators that are in the front. So we got the red one for power. We've got two green ones for when it's accessing the disk drive. So I thought they were going to have like their own separate thing, but it's one entire assembly. So it looks like they just made the middle portion. Gave it a texture. Just, I don't know, maybe that kind of helps the light not like go from one side to the other or something. So yep, that's all that is. Just a big clear piece of plastic. So we'll set that aside. Oh no, there's like a little clear piece of plastic right in the between the two LEDs. So it looks like that might have broken off at some point. But I mean, it doesn't affect anything. Okay, I think this is the last of the screws holding the shielding to the board. Nope, there's one more right there. Now I think we got it. Okay. Yeah, there we go. So all the shielding comes out, and holy crap, there's a bunch of RAM right there. So everything else is built onto the bottom of the board, including the regulator, the voltage regulator section. It's a little more sophisticated than I thought it was going to be. I'm going to have to, okay, it looks like I got to remove that screw. And then there's a small subboard in the front. That's for the controller port. And we got a backup battery. Okay, with that screw removed, I think everything else should be able to just lift out. So let's see. Well, there's this other metal plate covering the side AV connector. And as far as I'm aware, the only thing that this connector was ever used for was for an add-on that you could plug into that for playing video CDs on this unit. I don't think anything else used it, or nothing else was ever released for it. And here's another plate that's coming off that shields all the rear connectors. So every time I try to pull it out, something else starts like lifting out. Okay, I think I'm going to have to disconnect the controller ports, or port. There's only one controller port on these units. Basically, the controllers, you had to daisy chain them. So instead of having like two controller ports or four or whatever it was, the controllers themselves have another port on there. So you would just plug the main one into the unit, and then the second player would connect to that, third player, and so on. So not sure why they decided to go in that direction, but that's how they did it. All right, there we go. So this is lifting up. I'm going to pulling it from the front and out. So quite a lot of stuff on this board. Mostly on the top. There's nothing on the bottom. Date of 1993. Okay, since the controller port board is the least populated one, let's take a look at that real quick. Nothing else on the bottom other than more shielding. So we'll just set this part aside. Not much to look at. And there we go. Got some filtering. That's probably going to be for power going out to power the controllers. You can see it's got a pretty thick trace going to what would be pin number 5. And then we got a bunch of other lines going through. Some very light filtering. Looks like it's just capacitors and resistors. There's only 2 resistors, though. The rest of them are capacitors. So yeah, that's all that's on here, and that's the connector going to the main board. So not a whole lot to look at. Okay, so starting off in the transformer input section, that one connector that went to the middle of the transformer, that definitely looks like a ground. It connects to one side of this resistor. The other resistor connects to this big thick trace that goes to the negative, and as we can see, that's all part of the grounding for the unit, so that will shield the ground. So internally inside of the transformer, this probably connects to the metallic case somehow, although I don't really see anything. So, or it could also be like a strip of copper that's usually wound around the outside of the coils of the transformer, and maybe that's also for like noise rejection or something. That's pretty much all I can think of. I'm not an expert on the design of any of that sort of thing, but that's my best guess. I think that might be what's going on. We can see that the other two pins from the transformer, one goes through the fuse, the other one goes directly into this. It looks like it's a common mode choke. And so one side of this goes to another inductor on the other side. That you can see L3. The other side goes to an L2. Those two go to the bridge rectifier, the full bridge rectifier. And as we saw already, the negative, that goes directly into the ground. There's another trace. We can see the via there. Looks like maybe that's going to jump over to that side. And okay, that's for the fan. So after they've rectified the voltage coming from the transformer, it goes into that IC, which is going to be a voltage regulator. I mean, it's pretty obvious with the thick traces going to it. So this is probably the 9-volt regulator. Let's see if you can tell what the numbers on that are. It says 3090C. I'll probably just leave a little blurb down in the bottom with the text on whether or not it's a 9-volt regulator, but that makes sense. We have another surface mount device, and that looks like it says D3, so this is going to be a diode. It's probably just a protection of some sort. And there's that full bridge rectifier. And that fuse, it's a 3.15 amp at 125 volts. We've got another diode. It's another DPAC package diode. You can see right there, D31. And then D32, there's another little diode. This is going to be another voltage regulator. And I'm going to guess that this is most likely going to be a 5-volt regulator. And is that a switching regulator? There's an inductor right there, and it goes directly into one of the pins of that regulator. So yeah, it looks like that's definitely going to be a small switching regulator. And talking about the elephant in the room, or ignoring the elephant in the room, we got a huge capacitor right there, 25 volt at 6800 microfarad. So that looks like it's for that's going to be for the mains, or not the mains, but the rectified voltage after the bridge rectifier. You can see positive goes through that thick trace, and it goes to one side of that big capacitor. The other side is more likely than not going, so it goes to that like metal, that terminal that goes to this metal can. This metal can also connects over to this side, so that's all part of the ground. So that's the negative side, that's the positive side. So whatever voltage that is that's being rectified from the transformer, that's what's getting stored in bulk in that big capacitor, and then the two regulators deal with it after that. So there's the power switch, and it looks like we just have some tiny traces going to that, or at least on this side we have one tiny trace. On the other side, I cannot tell if there's another trace. Let's get a little closer to that, see what we can see. Well, nope. There's no other traces, at least not on the bottom side. So it's possible that maybe it has some internal traces in the board. Yeah, and we're not going to be able to see those. As we can see on the top side, it's completely surrounded by grounding. And I'm going to guess by the looks of it, it looks like it goes to some vias over on, and this does not look good. Oh boy. We got some corrosion going on. Well, that's no bueno. Yeah, so this capacitor has been leaky. What is it? There it is, a 10 microfarad 16 volt capacitor. And yep, that one's been juicing out. So that's going to have to get replaced. Well, I guess it's a good thing I opened this up. What other capacitors are problematic? That just looks like glue, so I'm not worried about that. What about that other capacitor? I can't see the bottom of that one. That would be those sets of pins, but actually, oh, never mind. I thought that the 1V on the corner was green from corrosion, but it looks like it's just from the solder mask. So, no, that looks fine. All right, so I think I should have something comparable that I can at least replace that with. So I'll deal with that, and I'll also see about fixing up those vias, because if those get eaten through, then yeah, it's going to become a problem. But anyways, as I was saying, I think that this power switch probably enables this voltage regulator, and then that feeds all the digital logic stuff, and that's how the unit powers up. That's pretty much about it for the voltage regulator and rectification section. There's a bunch of other tiny little diodes inside or in this area. Got some more resistors. Oh, there's no inductors on those two that I said were probably inductors. It's just straight up jumpers. So I guess they didn't really need them. And zooming out right next to the power supply section, we have a bank of all the system memory. And looks like all that stuff is going to this IC. And this one's called MADAM. And I think the other one's called, oh, yeah, Clio. That's the other IC. I don't remember which one does what, but those are basically like the two main system ICs. And we also got this other large IC right there, that BT9101. Says obviously enough video encoder. So looks like that's going to be doing all the video output stuff. And then we got some smaller stuff right there. Then what does that say? Asahi Kasei. I'm guessing that's the brand AK4316-VS. I'm going to assume that maybe that's audio stuff. There's a 16.9 megahertz crystal right near it. So that's what I'm guessing that is. I'll look it up in a minute. I'll probably leave another comment saying what it actually is. LM324. Not a whole lot of surprises finding that there. That would be a quad op amp. This IC is right by the expansion port. And we see we got some lines going to there. So I think, yeah, this is going to be like a probably a transceiver IC. If you saw the video that I did on the teardown of the memory unit for these consoles, it had another similar looking IC inside of that unit. So I'm guessing that these have to work in pairs. So you got this one inside of this unit, you got the other one inside of the other unit, and then they communicate using these lines, and then it, controls whatever it is it needs to control. As far as I'm aware, the only thing that could plug into that was the memory units. So I don't think anything else was made. Kind of finger there pointing with the a ground. I'm guessing they're trying to say that's a grounding point, or to ground yourself before you work on it. And then we got a VLSI ARM IC. So that looks like it's going to be one of the processors for this unit. We got a ROM that's not populated on those pads. And then we do have one that's populated. There you go. It says FZ-1 system. And it's got a date of 1993. And we can zoom in a bit on these because we can fit them in better. There we go. 49th week of 1993. And then we've got an actual Sony chip on the side. And that looks like it's also another RAM chip. So this is going to be the 32 kilobytes of RAM for game saves. I also mentioned this in the other memory storage video, that this unit has 32 kilobytes of game save built in. So that's going to be that. And it makes sense because then we've got the backup battery right next to it. So that's going to be providing power when the unit is not powered up. And that's what's going to allow the memory contents to stay intact. And just to the side of where the memory IC is, that's where we have a bunch of resistors. And that looks like it's all interface stuff, or like termination for the AV connector that's on the side of the unit. That's the one that I said went to the adapter that allows you to view video CDs on these consoles. If we kind of go off to the side a bit, right where we got this small can, that's going to be the modulator. So a tiny little thing. And it looks like it only has 3 pins. As we can see on the side, it says 321. But let's see if we flip it over. Where is it? There it is, right there. So 1, 2, 3. So it's most likely going to be one for audio, one for video, and one's going to be the voltage input, which looks like it's going to be that thick trace. So these two are going to be filtering before the audio and the video gets into the RF modulator. These other connectors, that's the S video connector. You can see it's got the 4 terminals. It's also got some filtering. Everything on this unit has a filtering of some sort on all the output ports and the inputs. This looks like it may have been worked on at some point. You can see that there's flux residue there, but there's none on the other ones. So this unit probably had audio issues on the left channel, and there's some evidence of it because nothing else that I've seen looks like it's ever been touched with solder. Yeah, no, just taking a quick glance, I don't see anything else that looks like it's been messed with. So it's like that may have been the only problem at some point, and I think maybe that makes sense why it felt like some of the screws were kind of loose. They didn't feel like factory tightened down or anything. So, oh, that's interesting. And there we go. There's some close shots of the 2 main system ICs. We can see you got the 3DO logo. It says Clio. And these were manufactured in the 45th week of 93. The Madame IC. Look at that one. 45th week of 93 as well. The ICs were available. It looks like this unit was just manufactured a little bit later. Got a 50 megahertz IC, or IC crystal right next to it. And then that's all the system RAM. It's kind of funky how they used, looks like they got a Fairchild and Mitsubishi parts. And they're all sort of in the same like areas, like the 2 Mitsubishi parts are in the middle. They're surrounded by the Fairchild parts, so that's kind of interesting. I do not see any leakage from any of these capacitors in the, what I'm guessing this is going to be the audio section. So all the stuff in this area looks pretty good. None of the other capacitors around the board look leaky either. Well, I wasn't intending on doing any of this and finding stuff to repair, but as I mentioned, since we're already inside, we're going to replace this capacitor that's leaky. And I do have a replacement. However, it's way smaller than the original, but it's got the similar specs, 105 degrees C, 16 volt, 10 microfarad. So this should be just fine. So I'll remove that capacitor and try to see about cleaning up these vias. So that via goes to the other side, and that's the one that goes to the switch. The other 2 are both connected together, so it looks like it's just for like increased current capability. So I'll just make sure all this stuff is clean and that the corrosion is not going to affect anything negatively. Maybe I'll even run like a wire from one side to the other on all of these, just to make sure that the any corrosion inside of that via doesn't ruin things any further. So I'll get some stuff together, and we'll pull this capacitor off and put the new one in. Well, shoot, I didn't realize until after the fact that I wasn't recording the entire time, but I pulled off the one capacitor that we know for sure is leaky, and I pulled off the other one, and at first glance, I didn't notice anything, so I thought it would be fine. And I thought, well, I'll test it out and make sure it's okay with like the LCR meter. And then I looked down at the board and I realized that nope, there is corrosion there. And then after looking at it again a little better, I could tell that there's a little bit of greening on one of the pins. So yeah, this capacitor is going to have to go as well. I'm not sure if I've got a replacement for that, although I might. I'll have to go look again. But set that one aside, and then I thought, well, shoot, I should probably remove the other one. Because, let's see, all these, yeah, these are all Panasonic or Matsushita caps. So I thought, well, I should probably check it also. This one does not look bad at all. So this one's probably going to be just fine. All right. So unfortunately for this one, I don't have an equivalent replacement. I do have these 10 volt, 1000 microfarad that I'll pop one of these in for now. And probably maybe next time I order some parts, I'll throw some of this value into my order, but at least this won't be leaky. So I don't have to worry so much about stuff further corroding, at least not for the time being. So yeah, let's go ahead and clean the rest of this up. So let's put some flux on these pads. All right. There we go. It's looking way better already. Probably use a smaller tip for this. Well, yeah, I'll get a smaller tip for those. This isn't exactly working. So let's just take care of this one. Well, I still got the larger tip. Luckily, it didn't eat too much of the material away, so this is going to be good. All right, let's get all up in these VS faces, but this glare is kind of making it hard to see things. Let's clean up some of this flux first. I'll have some fresh flux. Well, material doesn't look too bad, so I think if I just hit them superficially, that should be fine. Thought maybe they'd look a little worse. I didn't like how this one looked, but no, I think it's fine. And the vias on the other side, they look pretty good, so I think I'm not going to mess with those too much. I'll just leave them be. If the top looked worse than it was, then yeah, I probably would have like messed with it a little more. But no, I think they'll be fine. All right, and now that I covered them up, I'm going to have to suck these holes back out. So just going to add a bit fresh flux and get the desoldering gun back in. Did that open up all the way? I can't tell. Let's do these. All right, those two look good. Okay, all the capacitors are back in place. We'll just quickly solder them back in. All right, I think that's going to do it. And just trim off the extra lead. All right, there we go. So we got two new capacitors. Let's put everything back together and make sure I didn't actually ruin anything. Okay, at this point, it's put enough mostly together, good enough to test. Just almost forgot the transformer. There we go. So plug those in. Okay. So yeah, I can plug this in now, and hopefully if nothing went wrong, it should power up, and then maybe we can see what actually happens with the laser pickup once we open up the tray, see if the brushes that are underneath it actually wipe it or not. I just need to go get a game disc. All right, and wait and grab couple games. Let's plug this in and see what the, well, first of all, I'll make sure that the switch is not on. Okay. So I'm going to plug this in. Let's see what the laser pickup does there when we turn it on. We saw that it just lifted it up. So it's moving. It's trying to look for a CD. There's no CD. Let's open up the tray. That's this switch. Ah, there we go. So it does move back. So I guess those brushes underneath the tray are for brushing any dust off of the laser lens when it opens up. So that's pretty neat. I hadn't seen any other console that did that. At least none that I know of. So let's see if this is going to spin up. I guess I should plug in the video while I'm at it. So that's video. And we'll hook up the audio also. And get my capture device, and it's on. Ah, there we go. It's working. Perfect. So, doesn't look like I messed anything up. It's reading the disc. There it is. Sweet. Well, I mean, there was really nothing wrong with it. Otherwise, I didn't know those capacitors were bad until I just opened it up today. So, but, I mean, it's working fine. Let's see, do we have audio? Is it picking up the audio or not? Did I even plug it into the right thing? Kind of have a mess of wires back here that everything sort of goes to.
I just finished my usual morning routine of nude funkercise.
Oh, yeah, there it is.
Fired up the Barca Lounger, grabbed a quick bite to eat, and prepared to watch some serious tube.
Some serious tube. Just like we're doing now.
Little did I
recording
know,
some serious tube.
My snack was sent by Rez.
Yeah, this these 90s games were something else. Had to have that tude. But, I mean, we got the point. It's working, so I'm just going to turn it off. All right, so since it's all working, I'm just going to finish reassembling the thing. There's still some dust on that. Need to wipe that off. Oh, shoot. Almost forgot about the fan. There's a bit of dust on this metal can. Kind of forgot about it. There we go. Blow it out. And actually, I should give this a wipe before I put it back in. It's really not that bad. Like, this thing was not used very well, or very much. All right, it's a lot cleaner than it was. All right, there we go. Got it all back together. Don't hear anything rattling around inside, so I think we're good. All right, so we're done with this, but as a quick little bonus, I say that we take a look at what's inside the controller. And here we got the controller. So here we go. And this controller, it looks a lot like a Sega Genesis controller. I mean, this is like a fancier one with like more controls and stuff. But as you can see, the layout really not that much different. One thing that kind of drives me nuts about the way this looks is how this the D-pad is so offset from the center of this circle area at the bottom left. So, I mean, minor thing, but whatever. Also, these actually had a headphone plug on them, and they have a volume control. So, not sure of any other consoles that had that sort of thing back in the day. So, I have a feeling that inside of this controller, there's going to be definitely a lot more going on, like electronics-wise, than in some other game controllers where they were mostly just like shift register based, like the NES or like Super NES controllers. And so let's go ahead and take these screws out. It's got 6 screws in the back. Okay, and the last screw, free. There we go. This will pop open without dumping everything out. I'll just try to keep it facing down. I have a bunch of buttons going everywhere. Yeah, and there we go. We got the usual silicone pads. So expected to see that. Got the other one there for the 2 middle buttons, and then the 3 buttons on the side. And now all the screws decide to fall out. When I wanted them to fall out when I was trying to open it up, they wouldn't, but now they are. Well, whatever. So there we go. We see we've got some sort of interconnection going on that side and on that side. So we'll see what that's all about in a second. Is there? Oh, I can already see some IC. I see. And there we go. It's popping out. All right. So back of the case, not much to see there. Here we go. Let's flip it over, see what all's going on. There we go. Yeah, so definitely a lot more custom stuff going on. We got a 74HC 4066. That's a, what is it? It's a, oh, that's a shift register, if I remember correctly. I'll look it up here in a sec. So they got some sort of custom chip. So we can see that the traces kind of go, okay, so some go off directly into the second connector, but it looks like they're also tapped off and they go to other stuff inside of this controller. So it looks like got those vias there. Yeah, those are some of the ones that come from that side. So it looks like a lot of the controllers kind of like work in parallel. But there's the headphone jack and the volume control. So this, judging by these capacitors that are in front of it, that's going to be an audio amplifier. It says MM1030. I'll look that up in a second as well. So the headphone jack, it's got 3 contacts on it. So one's going to be ground and then one's going to be left and right, most likely. Okay, I looked them up. So no, this is not a shift register. That's a quadruple bilateral analog switch. So that's kind of what each logic section looks like. So it's got 4 switches, basically, and then they can be selected which one's going to be the input and the output. So, yeah, that's what that is. Not what I thought it was initially. And I could not find anything about this IC, but I mean, it's pretty obvious that it's going to be an audio amplifier of some sort. Now, something that I did not notice until I was actually trying to get a good look at that IC. All these capacitors are leaky. And unfortunately, I do not have replacements for those, so I am going to have to order them. So I think while I have this thing open, I'll just desolder all the capacitors, and I'll set this controller aside. I mean, it's not like I'm playing this thing all the time or anything. So, let me get you up close, and you can see what that looks like. There we go. Look at that. Nasty. And it looks like it's affected some of the traces, the copper on the traces as well. So all 3 of these have leakage of some sort. Looks like that one on the end is definitely the worst one. And when I saw this, like black stuff on the board, I thought that, I mean, it just looks like it's maybe like flux or something. And I think maybe some of it is. Yeah, that's hard. That's definitely flux. But then on the other side of the board, on the end, that, I mean, why would there be so much flux there? And nope, that's not flux. That's capacitor leakage. So definitely nasty. There we go. You can see that one's got the leakage going on as well. So I'm definitely going to have to remove these and clean up the board before I do anything else. Because, yeah, otherwise everything else is just going to get ruined in here. And there we go. That's what was inside of the 3DO console. I mean, now it's completely put back together, but at least I'm glad that it's still working. The controller, I'm just going to clean up behind the scenes. Like I said, I got to order new capacitors. So I'm just kind of going to give everything a bit of a standard cleaning and get rid of some of that crap that's on the board. So, yeah, I'm going to have to deal with this later. But I guess in a way, I'm kind of glad I decided to do this teardown because I found problems both in the console and in the controller that should be taken care of before they make things worse. So we're going to leave it there. That's going to do it for this one. So thank you all for watching once again, and I will see you guys around the bench.